Om. 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 Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Yanamurtim Dvandvatitam Ganganasadrisham Tattvamasya Dilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Triguna Rahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Narayanam Padmabhavam Vashishtam Shaktim Chatat Putra Parasarancha Vyasam Sukham Gaudapadam Mahantam Govinda Yogindra Matasya Shisham Shri Shankaracharya Matasya Padmaha Padam Chahastam Alakancha Shishyam Tam Totikam Bartika Karamanyan Asmad Gurum Shantatam Anatoshmi Vishwam Darpanadrishyam Anyanagari Tulyam Nijantargatam Pashyanatmani Mayaya Bhaihurivod Bhutam Yata Nidraya Yasakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanameva Dvayam Tasmai Shri Gurumurtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om. Okay, good. So I'm looking for happiness, for satisfaction, for peace, for freedom, for joy in objects. That's called samsara. That's called duality. You've all heard the word duality? Who has not heard the word duality? Okay, good. Everybody's heard that word. Now we need to have a definition for duality. And duality is just a very simple definition. Duality is a belief. Duality is not a fact. All right? Reality is not a duality. Reality is non-dual. But it seems to be a duality. So duality is the belief that the subject, remember, we said that there are only two components to my experience. Me, the subject, and the objects appearing in me. The objects or experiences that are presenting themselves to me. That's all my life is me and objects. And the main object is just experience itself. I'm a witness to my experience. And duality is a belief that the subject and the object are actually different. That this object is different from the subject. That's called duality. And Vedanta, which, as I said, is an ancient science, thousands of years ago made this statement in the Upanishads. The Upanishads are the source texts for this knowledge, the science of Brahman, or the science of consciousness. The Upanishads declared that reality is non-dual. They start with the statement that reality is non-dual. The whole Vedanta means of knowledge, the whole Vedanta tradition is based upon the fact that reality is non-dual. Now that's counterintuitive. Counterintuitive means, that's not how I experience it, is it? Do you experience reality to be non-dual? Do you experience the objects to be one with you, or do you experience the objects to be separate from you? You experience the objects to be separate from you. I do too, everybody does. No? Oh, good for you. No, some people understand. But generally, because if the objects were non-separate from you, you wouldn't be pursuing objects, would you? Why would you chase this experience, chase that experience, and so forth and so on? If it was, if you already had it, you were already one with it. Why would you go for an experience, for an object? You wouldn't. You would only chase an experience, what? Because you think it is separate from you, and if you get it, it will make you complete. It will become one with you. The whole thing about love is becoming one with somebody else, isn't it? The worldly love is that feeling of being one, being connected, being non-separate from the other person. That's what joy or happiness is. So my experience is that the subject and object are separate. In other words, I take reality to be a duality, and the Vedanta says it's a non-duality. Now, look at these lines. Which is the longer line and which is the shorter line? Go by your perception. The line on the top is longer than the one on the bottom. Looks that way, doesn't it? But if you measure them, they're exactly the same length. Just subtract the fins. Subtract the fins here and the fins here, and you'll see that the lines are exactly the same length. This is called the Muller-Lyer Illusion. Now, what does that tell me? Experience tells me one thing, and knowledge tells me something else, doesn't it? When I actually investigate and get out my ruler and measure the lines, I see they're exactly the same length. So knowledge is, those lines are the same length. But experience tells me they're not. Experience tells me one is shorter and one is longer. Is that right? Think about it. I still got to think now. Experience tells me that what? Reality is a duality, and knowledge, when I investigate it, when I get out my measuring and measure it properly, I discover that reality is what? Non-dual. Now, non-dual means what? Non-dual means the subject and objects are one. It doesn't mean they're the same, it means they're one. We'll explain this as we go. Non-duality means there's no space and time and causality. See, now, we're sitting here in this room. We're all sitting here in this room. And wouldn't you say, I mean, just superficially, wouldn't you say that I'm sitting here and you're sitting there? Huh? You would say that. Any normal if a person from the outside, a normal person, we're a little different. But if a normal person from the outside walked in the door, they would say, that man is sitting there and those people are sitting there. And Vedanta says, no, it's not so. You're not sitting there and I'm not sitting here. There is no separation between you. Where is the line actually between you and me? Is there some magical point where you're there and I'm here? Now this is a very important teaching. If you can get this teaching here, we can quit the seminar and we can go sit in the sun. This is called the location of objects teaching, and this will show you what non-duality is. Duality we know well enough. Duality is just our own experience. That's your everyday experience. But non-duality, it takes a certain amount of inquiry, brain power, investigation, science to understand. Now, I say, okay, let's see, let me get up. Well, here we go. I got this one here. Where is this pen located? In my hand. Did somebody say in my hand? Don't be afraid, okay? I'm not going to bite you. No, it's normal. You say it's in my hand. It's over here in my hand. I say no, you're wrong. This is not in my hand. This pen is in me. Now we have, I'm making a non-dual statement, you're making a dual statement. You're saying, it's in my hand. And observation, i.e. using my senses, certainly seems to be here. But if we analyze perception, perception means how we experience. If we analyze perception, we can understand what non-duality means. And how are we going to do that? Well, perception, when you experience an object, it looks like the object, you're experiencing the object over here. But actually you're not experiencing the object over here. Where are you experiencing the object? In your mind. Isn't it? As soon as this object appears, the experience of a pen appears as a thought in your mind. If I put my hand here, now what do you experience? Hand knowledge. Huh? If I put my finger here, you experience finger knowledge. If I put my pen here, you experience pen knowledge. If there's a dog here, you experience dog knowledge. If there's a tree here, you experience tree knowledge. Where do you experience it? In my mind. No, you're not all coming over here, are you, to experience this object. You're staying right where you are, and the object is what? Appearing in your mind. as the thought pen. Dog, cat, whatever it is. All objects appear as thoughts in your mind. And the way it works is this. It's scientific. I'm not making this up. It's common sense, but we have to work through it because we don't think clearly through this whole process of perception. We just take perception for granted. We don't think about it. You're just born here and you start perceiving this way and you assume that the objects are there and that the subject is here, and that's how you function your whole life long. But when we actually investigate or inquire into our experience, we'll see that what? The object is not outside ourselves, is not away from us as it appears to be. What happens? Light from various sources strikes the object, light reflects on the object and creates stimuli, little light energies, and those little energies pass through the retina in your eye. Your eye has a little hole, and those light waves pass through the retina of your eye, and the pen appears on the back of your eyeball, upside down. And then the information, the pen, is just information, is just knowledge. It passes down the optic nerve. Isn't it the optic nerve? I think it's the optic nerve. It passes down the optic nerve, and during that process, it's reversed. It was upside down on the back of your eye, and what it appears in your mind, it appears right side up. The mind takes the shape, the form of the object, and the knowledge of the object is illumined by awareness, and what? And knowledge of the object appears, comes to you. You don't have any choice about it. If your eyes are open, your ears, all of your senses are open, you have no choice but to receive knowledge. It's not a will-based phenomenon. It just happens that way. That's how knowledge happens for everybody. Perception knowledge. There's another kind of knowledge, but we're talking the perception knowledge or experiential knowledge. So the mind takes the shape of the pen. And how can it do that? Now it's taken the shape of a pen. Okay? What happens now when the pen goes and my hand comes? How can the mind take the shape of a hand when it's just had the shape of a pen? How can it do that? Because you'd think that the pen would stick there, wouldn't you? And then the hand knowledge comes in, and there's a conflict here between the pen knowledge and the hand knowledge, and the mind doesn't know what to do. It says, I want to keep the pen knowledge. And you say, no, you have to get the hand knowledge. No, I want pen knowledge. No. Well, it's not like that, is it? The mind has no form. The mind is just consciousness, and it doesn't have any form. So it can take the form of anything that appears in it. It's like water or air. It's flexible, it's plastic. You put one thing in front of the mind and it takes that shape. You put another thing in the mind and it takes that shape. It can take any shape because it's limitless. Has no limits to it. It can modify to anything, to any feeling, to any thought, to any physical object. It can change. So what is the pen actually made out of? Is the pen made out of plastic? Huh? Is that what the pen is? Well, it could be. I mean, you could call it plastic, I suppose. Huh? But what about plastic? Where's plastic appear? In your mind.
Atoms.
Huh?
A lot of atoms.
Yeah, okay, it's atoms. Okay, yeah, it's atoms, quarks, protons, neutrons, huh? Space. Then those waves or protons or neutrons or chemical, whatever those things are, those little tiny particles, waves of particles. Those are all playing in what? In space. And space is what? Where does space exist?
In the mind.
In the mind. That's right. It's only a thought. Did you ever see space? Did you ever smell space? Touch space? Feel space? You never, no, not possible. It's subtler than your sense organs. It's just a thought in your mind. So knowledge of space is just a knowledge of a thought, the space thought. So you're not actually experiencing, even if we want to get back to consciousness, we can, as science is doing, we can dig down into matter, but at every level of which you investigate the matter, what? The matter changes and disappears. And the object that we saw 1 minute, what, isn't there then at the next level, and that object disappears and at the next level, and each object keeps disappearing, as we keep breaking this down. We can't actually find that this is a solid entity, object, existing in a particular place at a particular time. It's a potential object, science says. It's when you get down to the cloud chamber and they're looking at these particles, these elementary particles that are appearing, making little traces through the cloud, they have some sort of, I don't know what it is. They call it a cloud chamber. And that's how they determine the movement of these particles. The particle appears, and they say, oh, there's the particle, and then suddenly the particle disappears. And they don't know where it went. There's no, it appears and then it disappears. It just poof, goes, and then it comes up again and disappears again. Where is it going? So is this a solid object in my hand? Well, science tells you no. But we don't need to bother with science, because we're teaching something else. Science is going to figure out one day, maybe, that reality is non-dual. It won't change anything, but because it won't make you happier. You'll just read in the newspaper, reality is non-dual, and then you'll what? You'll eat your breakfast and go to work, and that's it. We're telling you the reality is non-dual because if you can understand what that means, it will remove your suffering. It will remove your sense of limitation and suffering. That's right. Now, so we've got the mind, that we got this pen, or any object, the pen just a symbol of any object. We have this object appearing, what? In me, in my consciousness, in my mind, as a pen thought. Now, how far away is the pen from the mind? No, that's right. It's not far away at all. There's no gap between, in other words, my mind's not here, and then the pen's just floating on the surface of the mind, just a few millimeters away from the mind. It's not just floating in space of the mind, is it? I don't have to get on a bridge and go from my mind to the object, do I? Or dig a tunnel to get to the object. I don't need to do that. Why? Because there's no separation between the mind and the object. So the experiencing entity, which is called the mind, That's the experiencing entity. We call it the subtle body. We'll get to that later on. Right? And the experienced object are actually one. Now, okay, next step. The next step. How far is my mind from me? How far? Is there a gap? No. Huh? My mind is me. You can't find a break. You can't find a gap. See, duality means there's a gap, there's a space. So that the mind is here and I'm here. But when you actually, from your own experience, you're telling me there's no gap between you and your mind, is there? Your mind is what? Is you appearing as an experiencing entity or as an experiencing instrument. Then how far am I from this object? If there's no separation between my mind and the object, and there's no separation between me and my mind, then there cannot be a separation between the object and what? And me. That's what non-duality means. That's what knowledge tells us. Experience tells us that these lines are separate. Experience tells us that the object is outside, sitting in space somewhere, and existing in time somewhere. And knowledge tells us quite another story. Knowledge tells us that there's no separation between me and the objects. Now don't get depressed, okay? Because the natural thing to think at this point, the most natural thing to think is this. Well, then enlightenment must be that I experience the objects and myself to be one. Right? Does anyone have that belief? That the object and me have to merge in some kind of experience. And that as long as I'm seeing objects as separate from myself, I'm not enlightened. Huh? You know something? That's not true. Huh? That's not true. Enlightenment is simply what? Non-duality, which equals enlightenment, is just simply knowledge. It's knowledge that while it looks like the subject and the object are different, in fact, they are not different. And there is no reason, and there's no way to change this perception at all. Because there's some factor other than myself that's creating this illusion of subject and object. And the object does not, what, stand in the way of the subject at all, does it? The object doesn't limit the subject at all. The subject, what, can take any form. It can have any kind of knowledge, instantly gain any kind of knowledge. Why? Because it's not conditioned by or modified by the experiences, the objects that take place in it. In me. Awareness. So non-duality is just knowledge. And duality is just a belief that the subject and object are what? Different. And the only reason I have that belief is because I have not investigated properly the relationship between the subject and the object. So if you meditate on this teaching carefully and think about it carefully, you will understand what non-duality means. Yes?
So the reason for this whole confusion of subject and object is just one thought, the thought, I am the body. And when I realize that this notion, I am the body, is just a thought in me, then I realize that time and space and the illusion of subject and object is also just thoughts in me.
Absolutely.
The illusion is gone.
That's right. That's absolutely right. You're anticipating the next statement. No, good. Very good. Now, if you say that this pen is here, that's true also. Assuming what? What assumption? I've forgotten your name.
Andreas.
Andreas, yes, Andreas. You've come 2 or 3 times now. Yeah, good. It's true. It's correct to say that the pen is in my hand, is over here. Assuming what? In other words, I'm making a particular assumption when I say that this is over here. And what is that assumption? Andreas just said it.
I'm the jiva.
I'm the body. I'm the body. If it's true, if you're the body, then what? Then this is over here in my hand. That's true. Now let me ask you this. Are you the body? No, the answer is no. Where do you experience the body? How and where do you experience the body? You experience the body in the same way and in the same place that you experience what? The pen. The body is made of exactly the same substance, it's material, as the body, and the body is an object known to me. The body, as soon as I pay attention to the body thought appears in my mind, in consciousness, right? And the body is known. See what the problem is? I've been taught that I'm this body. I've been taught that. I've been given that belief. We call that ignorance, avidya. Avidya means ignorance. We take it to be knowledge. Why? Because we're told by the people we love and trust, mom and dad and everybody else in the world, we're being told that what? You are this body. But on analysis, on investigation, on inquiry, what? This idea, right, suddenly destroyed. I cannot be the body, and if I'm not the body, then what? The objects are definitely not out there because it's the body that's objectifying everything. Understand? Now, if that's true, if it's true that reality is non-dual, then let's have a look at some of the Enlightenment ideas that are floating around in the spiritual world, and see how those ideas stack up. The first idea that we need to investigate is the idea that enlightenment is no mind, no thoughts. Nirvana. You've all heard that notion, huh? And that's the Buddhist notion. The self, enlightenment is nirvana. Nirvana means flame or desire or thought, because all thoughts come out of desires. And nir means not. So it's a state of desirelessness, of thought-free state. Is that true? Do my thoughts have the same degree of reality that I do? So that when I have a thought, I don't exist. And when I exist, I don't have a thought. Is that true? Like sickness and health. When I'm healthy, I can't be sick. When I'm sick, I can't be healthy. Those are opposites. Is thinking and my thoughts, are those opposite me? No. Definitely not. Same is true with ego. This idea that enlightenment is egolessness. I have to get rid of my ego to get enlightened. Same logic applies to my ego. Does my ego cancel me? If I have an ego, do I cease to exist? And when I exist as myself, is my ego gone? No. Hey, ego is just the same as any thought or any object. It's just an object appearing in me, and it doesn't change me, does it? For me to say that I have an ego means what? That I exist prior to my ego. That I exist prior to my mind. That my ego is only an object appearing in me. That my thoughts are only objects appearing in me. It's easier with the pen, isn't it? Huh? It's easier to see non-duality with the pen. But when we get down to the inner world, into ideas, then it's very more difficult to separate myself from what? The idea. See, for an object to exist, I have to know that it exists, don't I? You can't have an object without knowledge of an object. And to have knowledge of an object, what do you need? Consciousness. Consciousness. You have to be conscious. Now, when you experience a thought, when a thought comes, and this is how, just look at your own experience. Right? I'm here aware, and then a thought appears to me. Do I disappear when the thought appears? No. Huh? I don't disappear, do I? Now the thought goes. When the thought goes, do I disappear? Do I go? No, I don't. I remain what? Observing what? The absence of a thought. Now the thought is gone. Now, but what am I seeing now? The absence of a thought. When the next thought comes up, I didn't appear along with that thought. I was already here, wasn't I? And then the next thought appeared. So what? I'm constant. I'm always present. I'm never not present. And thoughts, feelings, experiences, including ego and so forth and so on, all of those things arise in me, are manufactured out of me and dissolve back into me, and they don't change me at all. Isn't that right? Don't look so confused. I told you this was going to be hard. Because if you feel that you're changing, then you've got a problem. Because we're telling you you don't change. You never changed. You're never going to change. You never were born. You're not going to die. There's no change for you whatsoever. So if you think you're going through changes and you're going to be different or something's going to happen, then you've got the wrong you. Then you've got avidya, or you're ignorant of the truth. Yes, Andreas.
So I think I'm the mind. That's the problem.
That's the problem. Or I think I'm the ego. See, there's this whole notion in the spiritual world that if you kill your ego, you're going to be enlightened. If you kill your mind, you get rid of all your thoughts, you're going to be enlightened.
If I think I change, I'm getting more conscious of myself. Is this right?
No. You can't get more conscious.
Yeah.
No, you can't. Consciousness doesn't change. Consciousness is permanent. It doesn't change.
But the way to get aware of this consciousness.
But no, you can't be aware of this consciousness because reality is non-dual. There's only consciousness. There's this belief that you're saying that I'm this person who's going to be aware of consciousness, isn't it? I'm getting more aware of consciousness, you're saying like that. But that's not true. You can't get more aware of consciousness.
But if I meditate, I get more and more deeper into my own knowing about it.
Knowing about you, those are just thoughts. You just have a different kind of knowledge. You have more knowledge of what? Of consciousness, but you're not more conscious.
Knowledge of consciousness.
You have more knowledge, yes, you may have more or less knowledge, but the more you get that kind of knowledge, the more ignorance you discover, isn't it? Vedanta is the knowledge that ends the quest for knowledge. It's called self-knowledge. When you understand what non-duality is, you see, your statement's based upon duality. You're taking duality to be real. You're saying that I and consciousness are what? Two different things. And that I'm getting this more knowledge of consciousness. Here's consciousness, and then I'm here, and I'm getting, as I go deeper and deeper, okay, consciousness here, I'm going deeper and deeper. The deeper I go, the more knowledge I get of consciousness. So that implies what? That there's two yous. A you that there's this consciousness that you're understanding, and then there's the you that's understanding it. But that's not how it is, because there's only one consciousness. And there's not two yous. You cannot become aware of consciousness. Why not? Because consciousness cannot be objectified. That is, you can't turn yourself into an object to be known. We'll get to that. Let's go back to this in these enlightenment. We'll come on that just shortly. You guys are good. You're anticipating. It means you're following the logic here. That's very good. Very good. Okay. So, whether or not I have thoughts, it doesn't matter, does it, as far as my existence is concerned? As far as who I am is concerned, is it? Because thoughts don't change me. Experiences don't change me, do they? I just remain always the same, aware, and then the experiences appear as objects in me, constantly coming and going, and what? And I just remain the same. Isn't that your own experience? Yeah. Yes, it is. If you say no, as Andreas says, you've identified with the mind. The mind is the part of consciousness. It's in consciousness. It's a part of consciousness that allows consciousness to experience objects. We'll get to that when we explain Maya and how that works. There's another enlightenment myth, the now. The power of now. And when my day was be here now. You probably are all too young for that. It was Baba Ram Dass. He was a famous guy. He was a PhD from Harvard University who took LSD and then started the psychedelic revolution in America, and then dropped out of acid and went to India. And he wrote this book called Be Here Now. It was the power of now, like 40 years ago. And then later on, Eckhart, tell us about 10, 15 years ago, Eckhart Tolle wrote a book called The Power of Now. And the idea there is that if I can get in the now, then I'm free, I'm enlightened. I'm not in the now. Why? Because I'm always in the future or the past, or I'm too agitated about something that's going on in my mind. And if I can just experience the now, then I'm free. Is that true? Does anybody believe that? No, a lot of people believe that. Millions of people believe that. Tell me how you get in the now. How would you do that?
Not think about the future, not think about the past, but just live in the moment.
Are you not doing that right now?
Of course.
Then what? Then you are experiencing the now all the time, aren't you?
Yes, but you can imagine how things could happen, what can inspire.
Right, but those would just be thoughts.
Exactly.
Thoughts of the future or thoughts of the past. But no experience takes place in the future or the past, does it? You never experience, huh? No, you're always experiencing now. You're never experiencing, you never go to the future to experience, you never go to the past to experience. You're always only experiencing now, because there is only now. Because what? Now is just a word that describes consciousness, yourself. It's a very bad word. It's an extremely bad word. Why? Because consciousness is not in time. So we're describing enlightenment or the knowledge of consciousness in terms of time. And that gives us a notion, a misleading idea that what? We can gain what? This thing called the now. We can experience this thing called the now. When we're already experiencing the now, we're never not experiencing the now. We're always experiencing the now, because the now is us. Understand?
You said space and time is only a thought.
Yeah.
Thought is in me.
Yeah.
So
there's no now.
yeah.
That's right. The idea of what the now is a thought, the idea of the future is a thought, the idea of the past is a thought, the idea of space is a thought, the idea of a time is simply a thought. And all those things appear in me, in consciousness, and disappear out of me, leaving me unchanged. And if you say I have to experience, enlightenment is experience of the now, we've got a problem, don't we? Because we've got duality again, don't we? Who is going to experience the now? How are you going to experience the now when you're already experiencing the now? Huh? So I don't have an experience problem here. I've got an ignorance problem. Understand? I think I'm not experiencing something that I'm already experiencing. And I'm trying to experience what I'm already experiencing. My God, what a problem. You see why it never works? You see why Eckhart's book always ends up on the shelf about 6 months later and collecting dust? And nobody reads it anymore. Because you can't get to the now because you are the now. Or then let's say you are not the now is you. Let's put it that way. There's a little difference between saying you are the now and the now is you. We'll get to that when we talk about Satya and Mithya. We have to take apart these notions because we want to stop you from what? Trying to get what you already got. Understand? We're saying what the knowledge, that when you come to the spiritual world, you're told that you need to experience this thing called enlightenment. That's where we need to gain enlightenment. You need to do something to gain enlightenment. And that enlightenment is going to be an experience that's going to take place at some time as the result of some things you do. That's what we're told. And it turns out that that's not true. So we have to analyze these experiences carefully to stop this notion. Otherwise, you're going to persist in the belief that you are what? The experiencing entity, the doer, the mind. Understand? We have to get rid of these notions. I know it's painful because we've all believed in it. I believed all these things. I mean, I tried to stop my mind. I tried to get rid of my ego. I tried every one of these things. I tried every spiritual path you could get. I was like a fanatic. I had time and I had money, so I could have wasted my time doing this. You know, it wasn't really a waste of time, but in a way it was. Because I wish I'd had met my teacher years before. It would have saved me all kinds of problems. But evidently, I wasn't meant to meet my teacher until I tried to gain enlightenment as some kind of experience. How are we doing here? 3:30. Take a little break. Huh? Are you okay? You good? You want to go on a little more? I don't want to jam you up too much. Huh? See, when I come to the spiritual world, this is what I'm taught. I can do this and I can get this moksha, this enlightenment, this freedom, by action, by my spiritual practices. And you can't. Why? Because action cannot produce a limitless result. We said that earlier, didn't we? And the one who's doing it, because the one who's doing the action is limited. And because the results of action never last. So any enlightenment that I would get through action, what? Is not going to last. We call that experiential enlightenment. There is experiential enlightenment. And that's very wonderful. And it may last for a day or a week or a month or a minute or 2 or 3 or who knows, however long. And then what? Off it goes. Because that notion of enlightenment is based upon the idea that reality is a duality. That's why it doesn't work. Because it's contrary to the nature of reality. If reality was a duality, then there would only be enlightenment, only would be experiential enlightenment. There would only be temporary enlightenments. People would have all these epiphanies and satoris and samadhis and so forth and so on. And then they'd get frustrated when those things went out, and then they'd do it again. They'd try to get it again, reproduce that experience again, right? Make that experience permanent, so forth and so on. If reality is a duality, that's the only other choice you've got. But reality is not a duality. Reality is non-dual. If that's true, now understand this, this is the key here in this teaching. If that's true, then I don't have an experience problem. I've only got an ignorance problem. I think that reality is a duality. I think I'm separate from myself. Myself being limitless freedom. Myself is limitless. It has no boundaries, no barriers. It doesn't modify, it doesn't change. It's everywhere. Right? That belief itself is separating me from myself. I can't be separate from myself, but I take myself to be separate from myself. And therefore I try to gain freedom when I'm already free. Huh? Yeah. I'm trying to get what I already got by doing something. Yeah. Good. That's good. Think about it. We're not saying that there's no place for action in the spiritual world, in the spiritual life, in my life. In fact, there is. Definitely is. And you don't have any choice about action anyway. It's not up to you. Action happens. When we talk about Ishvara and Maya, then we'll get clear about action. But as far as you as a doer, the doer person that you think you are, this experiencing entity, making some actions that are going to set you free, forget it. People get quite angry at me for telling this sometimes. It's a good thing I don't take it personally. I just teach Vedanta, so it's fine. But sometimes I get these nasty emails. Huh? Yeah, from some of the Neo teachers. They're teaching that the Neo-Advaita people, some of them, they really get angry. Because, because this just strikes at the very heart of all these actions that we're doing to try to gain an experience of ourselves. See, when are you not experiencing yourself? Yes?
When we point our attention outwards into the objects, into the physical world.
You're not experiencing yourself then?
Well, not the... well, yes, the focus of my attention would be then in the world of objects. Yes. So
but you're
and the material world is always changing.
That's true, but the always changing material world is what? What's it made out of? Me.
Oh, yes, it's okay.
So you're actually experiencing yourself apparently changing. Mm-hmm. Isn't it? Whenever you experience a changing object, you're actually just experiencing yourself seeming to change. You're not actually changing, but it looks like you're changing when you experience something that's changing. This is tricky. It's not complicated. It's very tricky, though. It's so subtle. See, enlightenment's a very subtle thing. It's something you grasp in your mind. That's why we have these teachings. So to make your mind subtle so you can understand it. When are you not experiencing you? Never. Yes.
In deep sleep, would that be?
No. Do you disappear when deep sleep happens?
I'm just not aware of it.
Well, yeah, your jiva is. We're going to get to that shortly. Get to that. When you're in deep, who is the you that's talking here? Let's put it that way. You say you're not here when you're in deep sleep. Huh? That the you that you're thinking about isn't there in deep sleep. But the you I see sitting there, is there in deep sleep. Because you can't sleep unless you're conscious, can you? Unless you're aware. How can you say that you went to sleep unless you're aware? How can you say that you slept well or slept badly unless you're aware? Huh? And why, even as a jiva, even as an individual, now you think you're this waking individual, but even that waking individual turns into a different kind of experiencer in deep sleep, and you get a very nice experience for that person. We call that prana, or the deep sleeper, in deep sleep. This is why you make a lot of, you're worried about your bed, you're worried about the noise, you're worried about the light. You want to have a good sleep. Why? Because you're there. One, as a deep sleeping entity, a limited entity, which is going to change into a dreamer or a waker. And two, you're there as awareness, what? Making it possible for what? That experience of deep sleep to take place. Because you cannot have experience without consciousness. And experience is just, for as far as jivas are concerned, individuals are concerned, has only three forms. Waking, dream, and deep sleep. That's all experience is. It's three states. Waking, dream, and deep sleep. And none of those are possible without consciousness. If you remove the consciousness, then there's no deep sleep, there's no waking state, and there's no dream state. Experience disappears. Because experience depends upon consciousness for its existence. It is consciousness, you, apparently changing. Seeming to change. Seeming to go through these different states or experiences. Understand? So, all of these, we don't need to go through all of the Enlightenment myths. You can read my book in chapter 2 if you want to be thoroughly disappointed and disillusioned. Because I list about 8 or 10 different Enlightenment myths, stories. And all of those myths or stories are believed by 99% of the people in the spiritual world at some time or another. And they work very hard, labor very hard under these illusions and these myths, believing these stories until they eventually understand that there's something wrong with this narrative. That's when you start to really grow up. You really get mature. And listen, there's nothing wrong with it, because my whole orientation when I move into the spiritual world is what? I'm an individual, I'm a jiva, I'm a doer. A jiva means a doer. An individual person, a thinker, a feeler, an entity. And my whole life has been nothing but pursuing objects. So it's just very natural that, and ignorance is still with me. Just because I'm spiritual doesn't mean ignorance has gone away. So ignorance just carries right on into my spiritual life, and it makes me believe that I can what? I can do this thing, these actions, and get this result called enlightenment, or get it myself. It's just so natural. I don't even think about it. That's why when you go to the spiritual world, 99%, 95% of the teachers are teaching what? That you need to do this to get enlightened. You need to follow me, you need to chant, you need to meditate, you need to pray, you need to raise your kundalini, who knows? Whatever it is. They all tell you that. Well, how are you to know any different? So you sign up for their program. And you get your satoris, you get your samadhis, everything's lovely for a while, and then what? You're off to the next teacher. That one didn't work. Maybe I just have the wrong technique. So you try another technique and another guru. You become a Buddhist, or you become a yogi, or you become a who knows what. There's as many paths as there are people that there are as many paths as there are people out there. Everybody's got a different idea. Oh, well, that didn't work? Well, we've got just the thing for you. So if it's, and they're all based, as I said, on the notion that reality is a duality. And Vedanta says that's not true. Reality is non-dual. We already showed you what non-duality means. So you can't say you don't know what we're talking about. Now, okay. Now, if that's true, I've got an ignorance problem. I don't have an experience problem. We'll get to experience later, the value of it. Now, so that's teaching number 2. The first teaching is the joy is not in the object. Right? That you cannot, that what the happiness you're seeking in the object is actually your own experience of your own self. That you're already happy, you're already free, you're already okay, but you don't know it. One little teaching I forgot there in that first one. I'll just tell you. If anybody, I know you all are very advanced spiritual people, and so probably you figured this out. But if you haven't figured this out and you're still looking for objects to make you happy, then you should know this one more sad, miserable fact. And that sad, miserable fact is life is a zero-sum game. What does that mean? That means you can't win. Zero-sum means when you add everything up on this side and you add everything up on that side, it equals 0. It's like a balance sheet for a business. The assets always equal liabilities. That's a balance sheet. You have to, if you don't have a balance sheet if there's more assets than liabilities. That's how it is, because that's duality. So in the world of duality, in the thought world of duality, for every gain there's a loss. For every up there's a down. For every in there's an out. For example, you're lonely. Let's say, I'm lonely. That's not good. I don't want to be lonely. I meet you and we fall in love. What happens to my loneliness? Gone. I'm not lonely anymore. Nope. No problems. You say no problems? Big problem. Huh? What's the big problem? Attachment. Now I'm attached to you. And now my happiness depends upon you. So now I got a whole nother problem there. I get my intimacy, yes, but I lose my freedom. When I'm alone, at least I'm free, huh? But I've got no intimacy. Isn't it? I got $1,000 and I buy a TV. Okay, now I've got a TV, but where's my 1,000? Now I have to go and get some money, what? To pay the subscription for the TV and get my cable hooked up and all that sort of thing. There's no gain here without a loss. You don't lose more than you gain. You don't gain more than you lose. It's always zero sum. And when I was a kid, you know, when I was growing up, my father used to say, and I never understood it because I was a kid. I thought you could win. He said, you just can't win here. Huh? He used to say that often. I did it several times a week. I love my father. We did a lot of things together. And we come to all the time, you know, he'd say, geez, you just can't win. And because he was a mature person and he understood, you don't win here. My dad was like an enlightened person without the enlightenment. He was, yeah, he was very dispassionate. He was very clear. He wasn't chasing anything. He was really cool to be with. He was a very jolly, happy guy, basically. He didn't know why he was jolly and happy, but he did know that you can't get anything here. That you can't lose anything and you can't gain anything. That's like enlightenment without knowing it. So teaching number 1, the joy is not in the object. That reality is not a duality, it's a zero-sum game. A duality is a zero-sum game, let's put it like that. The second teaching is what? That I'm already free, and therefore any attempts to get free by doing actions is not going to work. The idea that I can do actions to get a result that will make me free is what? Just a frustration. I'm just frustrating myself. It's ignorance. And I keep trying over and over and over again, thinking one more meditation just a little deeper, so forth and you know that one? I just got to meditate a little longer. I've only meditated 5 hours today. Maybe if I meditate 7, then something will happen, You know that one? You keep waiting for that experience, boom, that big explosion, And when that big explosion comes, oh, peace and bliss, finally enlightened. Until what? There's this little tickling in your mind and the desire comes up and you start thinking of this and thinking of that, and pretty soon what? You're all disturbed and agitated and the subject-object duality comes back and what? Your enlightenment goes away and you say, oh well, why couldn't I hold on to it? Why couldn't I make it permanent? Well, there's no permanent experience. Experience is by its nature impermanent. There's only one experience that's permanent, and that's the experience of myself. And that experience of myself is not by someone other than me. In other words, I'm always experiencing myself all the time without doing anything. Now that's nice. Since my nature is whole and complete and it's blissful by nature, then what? When I know who I am, then what? I just feel good all the time. Even when my mind feels bad, I feel good. Even when duality is operating in me, I feel okay. I feel satisfied. I feel complete. I understand. So, we'll take a break and then we'll come back with teaching number 3. Teaching number 3 is what? Means of knowledge. If I've got an ignorance problem, then the only solution is knowledge. And if the solution is knowledge, then I need to have a means of knowledge. And we'll talk about that after the break.
Krishna Krishna